it from there. So we're going to talk a little bit about feeding horses on a budget, and this kind of came home to me a few days ago as we're all starting to feel the economic issues associated with this coronavirus. I know that it's affecting our home right now, so trying to think of all different ways to cut down on our budget. Some of them are really easy, like cable TV and whatnot. Some of them get to be a little bit harder when you start making some economic choices. So I know that one current concern that I have for our horse industry is that people are still able to get their horses fed and properly taken care of during this very strange and interesting time that we're living in. So a lot of people are under the impression that if you try to budget your horse's feeding program, that means you're going to decrease the amount of nutrients that you're giving, or decrease the quality of the feed that you're feeding to your horse. And I've always kind of looked at it at pretty much opposite of that. A lot of times I find that if I really focus on budgeting the diet through a nice balanced diet, I can actually feed my horse a more optimum diet than if I'm just stacking feeds on top of each other to get my horses fed. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But basically, when we start out a feeding program, we're feeding horses based on their individual requirements. And we have horses that kind of scale the spectrum for their nutrient needs. And if we start at the very bottom of this little chart, we have our ponies. So our ponies, our miniature horses, our donkeys would fall into that really low energy need category. Now they need their other nutrients like protein and vitamins and minerals as they're growing, as they're carrying a foal or lactating. But their energy requirements to scale are relatively easy to meet because they're so small, and we're kind of in that mindset of feeding large horses, so we tend to overfeed them anyway. Then we also have our pasture pets on that end of the spectrum, and these are the backyard horses that really don't get used at all. Either we don't have the time to work with them, or they're just past that stance in their life to where they're just not being worked or heavily ridden. So they also have really low energy requirements, and being adult horses, they also have lower protein requirements. As we move up the scale then, and this is actually, Gwen, I think this is you on your mare, but now we're getting into more of our light pleasure working horses. And these are horses that, you know, maybe we get out and work with them just to relieve a little bit of stress, go on a pleasure ride, but we're not necessarily working them for competition. Maybe we're riding them lightly 2 to 3 times a week. As we keep going up the scale then, and we get into more of our competition horses, we have horses that are competing primarily on flat work or at a, you know, canter or hand gallop. And these horses would be at a more moderate nutrition plane. And so their energy requirements are also going to increase with that increased exercise need. Then we have horses that are worked very heavily or very intensely. And this could be our polo ponies, are very hardworking horses. A lot of ranch horses that are doing cattle work almost every day would be considered in this heavy working horse category. Race horses would be in this category as well. So Grand Prix jumpers would probably fit into this category if they're in a heavy competition type situation. The next on the scale then, probably the hardest working horse at your barn is going to be your lactating broodmare. And if you think about it, as soon as this mare foals, her energy requirements, as well as her protein and calcium and phosphorus, which increases, but her energy requirements actually double as soon as she starts nursing that newborn foal. So she's really working hard to produce quality milk to ensure that her foal grows healthy. The foal itself then is somebody else that needs energy dense and a high quality protein in their diet, along with the other bells and whistles with the proper calcium and phosphorus balance and the trace minerals that will put on good muscle and skeletal tissue, as well as the vitamins and minerals. And then finally, I wanted to keep in mind the really thin horse. And these horses, usually we think of thin horses as horses that are being extremely mismanaged or neglected. But we can also have thin horses because of maybe they're uh, in a disease state, or recovering from the disease, or recovering from colic surgery. Horses can get really thin really fast after surgery. Or maybe there are geriatric horses, and due to dentistry and just the way they metabolize feed, they're just not getting enough nutrition to keep them at an appropriate weight. So if we think about all the different types of horses that we have to figure out how to feed, then we try to match those horses with the most appropriate feed resource that we have. And the base of every horse, no matter what the requirements are, well, with the exception of the milking foal, is going to be forage. So forage for our horses is extremely important. It promotes gut health. It also helps alleviate a lot of behavioral problems if our horses have enough forage in front of them during the day and night. Uh, Being able to continuously access forage helps decrease the risk of problems like ulcers and colic. So forage becomes pretty much the foundation of how we should think about feeding our horses. And there's different ways to incorporate forage into your horse's diet. If you have good opportunities to graze your horses on quality pastures, this is an excellent resource, because our pastures are full of vitamins that the horses need, some of the minerals that they need, and it's very energy dense, as well as pretty good protein resource for most horses. So that's an excellent source if you can keep your horse on pasture. Usually if horses are being stalled, then we're feeding them hay as their forage source. And there's, again, different options with feeding horses hay. You can feed an alfalfa, legume type hay that's very energy dense, high in protein, high in calcium. Or you can go down to a grass hay that has a little bit less energy associated with it. Mid-level, low to mid-level protein, depending on when it was harvested. So your softer grasses, when you field them in your hay, are usually going to be a higher quality resource for your horses, versus the real mature hay that was left out in the field until it was really, really tall and harvested. That's going to be coarser and lower in energy and protein. One thing to keep in mind, though, with our hay resources is, unlike our pasture, there's no vitamins associated virtually with our hay after they've been stored for about 3 months. So I never consider hay when I'm thinking about the vitamin resources for my horse. Sometimes you may need to feed different forms of hay, like hay cubes and hay pellets. These are easy ways to help stretch your hay if you are unable to purchase baled hay. You can stretch the amount of fiber in your horse's diet with these resources. And if you have a horse that is heavy or has allergies, sometimes this is a good pelleted hay or pelleted forage will help keep the dust down as well. So the next part of our pyramid is grain. So grain is kind of something that we add to the mix because of the way we have brought horses inside and increase their workload through riding them or driving them. And grain is usually used to increase the horse's energy in their feeding program, but as well as when you buy a concentrate, grain concentrate from your feed store from a reputable company, usually these concentrates are developed to feed different categories of horses. So you may buy a grain mix or a concentrate for your young growing horse, or your mature pleasure horse, or your racehorse, or your broodmare. So there's pretty much a different concentrate for every type of horse out there. We actually have concentrates that are lower in starch for horses with metabolic problems, as well as concentrates that are even geared towards our ponies and whatnot. The nice thing about feeding a balanced concentrate like that is you know that your vitamins and minerals are being met for the type of horse that you're feeding it to, versus feeding a horse straight grains like oats, where you'll need to also ensure that there's enough vitamins and minerals added to their diet. In between our forage and grains, we have complete feeds, and these are feeds that are combine both your horse's forage requirements as well as grains and a vitamin and mineral premix, mixed all up and at the correct ratio so that it can be fed as the only feed source for your horse. These feeds, again, are good for horses with feed allergies a lot of times, or allergic to dust associated with haze. And then sometimes you'll see these feeds fed to other types of horses where maybe a good quality forage is not very easy to access. And then at the very top of the spectrum, we have supplements. And so a lot of times when we start talking about budgeting our feeding program, supplements would be the first place that we would look as far as do we need them or do we not? Now there's some supplements that maybe your farrier has recommended because your horse has some problems with their hoof integrity. And then there may be supplements that your veterinarian recommends. But beyond your farrier and veterinarian, or the people that are working with you on your horse's health needs, a lot of times supplementation is more of a added on benefit that you might tack on. You might see something that's promoting a calm horse, or a supplement that's promoting a shiny coat, or muscle development. But usually these are added on to your horse's diet. So we'll talk about how that factors into the budget of your horse. So in most locations, your forage, feeding a quality forage diet to your horse is going to be very cost effective. Now, I understand that when you get into states like Florida, you may forage is like liquid gold. But at least in Michigan, we're still able to get, 60-pound, 50-pound bales of hay for 10 to 12 bucks. So for us then, if we can get access to a good quality of hay, we can feed a lot of different horses very high forage diets and actually end up decreasing our cost with that forage. Or if you have horses on pasture, this is another great way to decrease the cost of your diet. Either way, your goal should be to optimize the forage in your diet, or increase the amount of forage that you feed to your horses. And then as we go up the ladder to our grains, usually when you're feeding grain pound per pound, you're pretty much doubling the cost of that feed source. So you want to feed grain to the horses that need the grain, that need the added on energy into the horse's diet. When we get to supplements, though, supplements are usually quite a bit more expensive than forage or grain. So you really need to think through whether you're getting the benefit, the cost benefit of feeding that supplement. So as we move on, another consideration for feeding horses would be what is their body condition score? How much feed do I actually need to feed them? Because sometimes we can decrease our feed costs simply by decreasing the amount that we're feeding if we have horses in this really fat and heavy range. Ideally, we want to keep these horses at a body condition score of about 5 or moderate. And so if we look at these horses, they're thin around the neck, they're flat over their top line. If we can't see their ribs, but if we rub our hands across their rib cage, we could easily feel their ribs. They have some fat over their hip, but we don't see pones of fat over their hip. We don't see the crusty neck. Versus this guy over here, who's actually just an amazing therapeutic horse, but he is what we would term more on that metabolic issue scale. He's showing us the crusty neck. He maintains a really heavy body condition score of about 8. If we look at him over his back, he actually, if it's raining, water would actually pour over his back like a river. He's got a nice little dipped back there. And then he has pones of fat around his tail head as well. So he's kind of in that red zone, dangerous zone. So this would be a horse that would not require grain whatsoever. Okay, we would want to actually look at how much forage he's getting and the quality of it. He may be one that we have to restrict grazing if there's grazing opportunities by using a muzzle or just keeping him in a dry lot and feeding him a lower quality hay. But at the same token, we have to make sure he's getting his vitamins and minerals in as well. So we'll talk about that. On the other end of the scale, then we have our really thin horses. And these are horses that we actually need to increase the amount of feed that they're receiving, increase the quality of the feed they're receiving. A lot of times if you have a thin horse, but you also have access to good quality pasture, putting those horses on a quality pasture may help these horses recover into a more appropriate body weight faster than offering them even high quality hay. But we have to introduce feeds to the really thin horses safely. So you'll want to work with your veterinarian on upping the energy requirements of your feeds. These may also be horses that are on some sort of supplement based on the veterinarian's recommendations to help get them into a healthier state. So just to wrap things up, starting with feeding horses that have low nutrient requirements, like your weekend warrior that's not doing a whole lot, maybe a few rides a week, or your pasture pet, or that pony that you can't keep thin. One way to do that is if it's the grazing season, you have those horses out on pasture. Again, if you have a horse that tends to get too heavy on pasture, you need to restrict the grazing so that they maintain a moderate condition score. But the nice thing about pasture is it's going to meet most of your vitamin requirements. You still want to ensure that these horses have a salt block outside, and depending on where you live, Michigan happens to be a state that's soil is deficient in selenium. So when we feed horses out on pasture, we spend some extra money ensuring that their salt licks have added selenium into it for our horses. And then, as always, we make sure that there's plenty of clean, fresh water 24/7. Now, if you don't have access to pasture, or maybe it's just not appropriate to graze your horse because of metabolic issues, then you would be choosing potentially a hay as your horse's ration. Now, like we mentioned earlier, hays are going to lose their vitamin content by about 3 months in storage. So then there's ration balancers that you should consider feeding along with a hay alone diet. And these ration balancers aren't really a concentrate, a grain concentrate. They're really more of a mineral and vitamin resource, and potentially even a little bit of protein added that you feed at a very small rate. So a ration balancer to ensure that your horse has adequate vitamins, minerals, and maybe some essential amino acids like lysine, you might feed at a rate of 1 pound per day. And then along with this, again, you would still feed your salt block or trace mineral salt block. But since you're feeding the ration balancer, and that's going to ensure that you're meeting your selenium requirements, now you don't have to pay more for your salt block with the added selenium, because that would be included in the ration balancer product that you purchased. And again, clean, fresh water. So those are some ways to feed low nutrient requirement horses. Now, if we're feeding horses that have more of a higher plane of nutrition, we are usually going to start with our forage again, and that can be gained either by grazing or hay. A lot of times, though, if horses are in a heavy traveling, competing type season, it's going to be more structured around the hay portion of their diet. And these are horses that might benefit more from having some legume or alfalfa in their hay, because their energy needs and protein needs are going to be slightly increased due to their exercise. So feeding a mixed hay that's both grass and alfalfa mixed together is a really good option a lot of times for these horses with moderate needs. And then if if you still need to, feeding concentrate to ensure that you have enough energy in the horse's diet usually comes into play. Again, you probably won't have to feed that much of it. Most of these horses are going to require the minimum amount of concentrates unless they're on a really intense travel show season schedule. So from there then, you would also include your salt or trace mineral block. Because your concentrate is going to be balanced for your minerals and your vitamins, you shouldn't really need to add anything else to your salt block. But because your horse is working pretty hard, they're going to be sweating more, and that salt block is going to be important to help keep them keep their electrolytes up, as well as including fresh water with your horse. And then finally, we have these horses on that have a real high nutrient requirement. Again, we can either start with grazing, or we can start with hay, with the addition of a concentrate to try to balance out for their energy requirement, but also to ensure that they're getting the vitamins and minerals and the protein necessary for either growth, lactation, energy, or extreme exercise, as well as for those thin horses that are also putting on more muscle tissue. Some of these horses may be working so hard or need more energy, so that supplementing the diet with additional fat can come into play. Some of your concentrates will include fat supplementation. They're going to be on the higher end of the budget spectrum. Sometimes you can buy just a fat supplement alone and add it to your concentrate. Some people will choose to top dress with vegetable oil. Anytime you introduce fat into the feed, though, you need to introduce it slowly into the feed and make sure that your diet remains balanced for the protein and mineral and vitamin content. These horses may also require some supplementation. Again, if we're looking at it more from a budget and not a marketing standpoint, I would recommend don't supplement unless it's recommended by one of your health professionals that's helping you take care of your horse. And then these horses will also need the mineral or trace mineral or salt block. Doesn't really matter which you choose, as well as clean fresh water. So that's kind of budgeting your horse's nutrition in a nutshell. And with that, do you guys have any questions, or is there anything else you'd like to talk about? Your horse's nutrition in a nutshell. And with that, do you guys have any questions, or is there anything else you'd like to talk about? Okay, I see Riley has a question. Your horse's nutrition in a nutshell. And I see Riley has a question on Cushing's disease. So, so when we feed horses with Cushing's disease, that can be really a problem, and it kind of depends on the horse. Some horses with Cushing's disease are also thin, which makes it hard. But with horses with Cushing's disease, we do want to decrease the starch in the horse's diet. So again, optimizing forage may be important. Some horses with Cushing's tend to be more prone to laminitis, so we have to be careful as well about the sugar content in our forage. If we have a horse with Cushing's that is having trouble keeping weight on, we can use fat supplementation to keep the weight on those horses. So even within that Cushing's spectrum, um, we we have some different options. I personally, usually we associate Cushing's with our older horses, and I really do think these senior feeds are a tremendous asset when we're trying to manage our geriatric horses or horses with Cushing's as well. If you have a horse that has a lot of dental issues, the senior feeds can be fed as a complete feed. So because they have a really high fiber content, they can be the sole feed source for these horses. Cushing's, though, is one of those diseases that you want to work with your your veterinarian as well as you manage this horse, because ideally you still want to keep that older horse in that moderate body condition score, and you don't want them to get too thin, because it's really hard to get our seniors back up to speed if they lose too much weight. I hope that begins to answer your question. We do have a really good resource on our webinars. Dr. Hal Schott gave a great webinar several years ago on the Cushing's horse. It was one of his research areas, and I'd recommend watching that webinar for some more information. You can go to our YouTube site, My Horse University's YouTube site, to access that, or go to our website and look it up in our webinar page. Any other questions? I'm looking at the chat here. Let's see, Gwen, I'm not seeing any more comments here.
Nope, I don't see any other questions or comments
Okay.
either.
Great. Well, I guess my question for you guys is, if you like this format, what types of talks would you like to have, or chat topics would you like? We can bring in some guest speakers in the future. We're probably going to try this again next Tuesday and Thursday. So if you have anything that's on your mind right now, if you wouldn't mind typing it in either the chat or on our Facebook page, that it would help us get a couple of more topics pinned down for next week. I know one thing the MSU farm is working on right now is preparing for a situation where none of our workers can show up for work. So let's say that our workforce at the farm right now had to go under quarantine because of exposure to the coronavirus. That would mean that we need to have people that are available to come in and take care of, I think we have right now about 70 head of horses. And of course, it's foaling season right now, so you add that to the mix. We have stallions at the farm, and just a real hodgepodge of all different types of horses at the farm right now. So, so our farm manager is working on an emergency plan just to maintain the horses on the farm at a healthy level, but certainly not at the same type of level that we would be able to do if times were more normal. So I was thinking that might be something that would be interesting to cover in one of these lunch sessions. But anything else that you might want to hear more about? We could have somebody come in and talk about Cushing's, or other things that are on your mind right now. You're welcome, Laura. Um, if you think of something that's on your mind, just come back to our My Horse University Facebook page and pop in some suggestions, and we'll take a look see. And hopefully, you guys can join us next Tuesday, 12:15, and we'll try this again. White line in the hoof and treatments. That would be an awesome topic. We actually have a farrier now at our MSU doing our farrier program who's excellent. I'm going to see if I've been trying to get him to come and do a webinar for us. So maybe we can start them with a lunch chat, start them out easy. So that's a great suggestion. Anybody else? All right. Well, you guys have a great day. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Take care.
Okay, Chris, I have stopped the live stream.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the
Facebook.
recording.